Kia ora, welcome back to the Ins and Outs podcast. I'm Jemilah.
I'm Koen, and we're here to have casual and informative conversations about navigating the music industry in Aotearoa.
On this episode, we had a kōrero with Finn McLennan-Elliott about the ins and outs of a quote-unquote good show.
Finn is an artist manager and a touring manager, as well as the venue booker for the Tuning Fork in Tamaki Makaurau and San Fran in Wellington.
We talked about what you need to plan in order to put on a great show, grow your audience, and reach bigger venues.
Let's get into it. Welcome, Finn. We know you as the venue man over at the Tuning Fork and more TBC. But tell us a bit about yourself and your place in the industry, I guess.
Cool.
Journey getting there.
Yes, nice.
Yeah. So I am the booker and manager at the Tuning Fork, and I'm also the booker for San Fran, which is in Wellington. And I have spent the last 5 years working around Tuning Fork and then recently at San Fran. And alongside that, I've also been the artistic director for the Auckland Folk Festival. I manage / book and work with a couple of artists, Woody Donna, Fables, and have booked a range of tours over the years for mostly folk artists independently, and then through my role at Tuning Fork, also couple of sort of 2 or 3 city tours for more indie and alternative bands and things like that. So I've kind of worn a few different hats, doing a bit of management, bit of releasing, bit of touring, bit of booking, mostly now just venue based. So, yeah.
How did you get into that stuff?
It's a slight, every path, I guess, into music is slightly weird unless you're the musician pathway,
sure.
I guess.
Yeah.
To get into the industry is always, has a slightly weird and wonderful way to get there. I studied human geography at Auckland University, and it was a pivot from like environmental law, so it was like not at all what I thought I'd go into.
Complete different direction, yeah.
And then I did a paper on like binaries, like gender binaries, and a whole bunch of like sort of sociology and things like that, and then was like, yeah, quite like this. So I followed that pathway, and then my 4th year for my dissertation, I'd started to try and weave music in as much as I could into the degree, and started looking at music venues. And for my dissertation, I did a sort of project looking at music venues and how they create a third place for people. So they have like a home space and a workspace, and they have a third place. And so it was so it was looking at sort of the emotional and social experience of a venue for the musicians and the audience and the people that run the space and what makes it work. And I looked at mostly a couple of folk clubs, looked at Devonport Folk Club up on Mountain Vic and Devonport there, and a few others, and then found myself coincidentally also playing in a folk band. And sort of that was how I came into the folk world. And then sort of cut year or two of doing that, I was playing gigs. I was putting on a few shows at that point. I started a blog or like a music website called Secondhand News, reviewing shows, all folk specific, joined the folk festival. And then a few years later, they were looking for some help at the Tuning Fork, and I was looking for something else to dig into. So that was that.
Yeah.
Cool.
And here you are.
Yeah, quite a natural,
how
but different approach. Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
How many years has it been since you first started working at the Tuning Fork to now? I'm just
about
curious about time.
it's sort of about 5 years now.
Yeah.
Like
cool. Yeah,
I started off just working some shows, helping with a little bit of booking. Then over the last 2, 3 years, 4 years, I've sort of picked up more and more. Now I'm like a primary booker.
Wicked. What, I guess, diving into booking a show from an artist point of view, and especially because you've gone through booking a few shows and you kind of exploring it and learning as you go, and then now obviously booking shows left and right. Yeah. What are things to look out for when you're booking a show? What's good? What's bad? What's things to be careful of? I guess what goes into booking and putting on a good event? I mean, that's such a broad question, but it's super. I guess let's start with like pre-show. What do you want to have ready? And what's maybe a sort of timeline before obviously the show happens, or maybe before you find yourself 2 weeks out of the gig and you're like, oh crap, I have nothing ready.
I think every time I sit and talk to artists, I was sitting down last week chatting to someone just to work through their plan and what they're doing at the moment. Literally, my first thing is talking about having a plan.
Yeah.
Sounds real like cliche and boring, but everything you do in terms of your release, in terms of your touring, in terms of your like process of developing as an artist should be planned. You don't have to have a manager. You don't have to have a booking agent. You don't have to have a team to do that. You don't have to have a label. You can do it all yourself. You just need to know what those steps are. And they don't all have to work. They don't all have to happen. They don't all have to be sequential even. But like as long as there is a plan and it's a short term, a medium and a long term, whatever you want to be looking at, you can have any of them or all of them. Just I think that's the most important thing. So, you know, when you're looking at putting on a show, you got to step back and look at why you're doing that show. Is it, are you working up to a release? Have you got a single coming out? Have you got an EP, an album coming out? Are you supporting someone else? Are you doing a co-headline with somebody else? Are you just wanting to put on a show because you haven't put on one for 4 months or 5 months and you just want to get back into doing things? Or are you in that process where you're just playing shows every month? Like, are you at that point where you're in between cycle, or you are miles away from your first EP or first album and you're just literally wanting to play as often as you possibly can? And sometimes it's your show you're organising, sometimes it's someone else's show you're getting on top of or getting involved with. You just need to know what you're going into it for, and then it comes down to looking at the next steps of what you do then for that show. But if you know what the show's for, then that's the first step.
Right. So let's say, I mean, there's a very familiar, let's just play some shows because we've just started a band.
Totally.
Let's put a show on because we've got this single that we're building up towards, or an EP. And maybe now, like, hey, let's put on a big show because we've got a single coming out. What's that? I think
it's like a tier. There's like almost like a
totally
tier level. And I guess
for sure.
There's like different venues that you would associate with each tier in terms of like size and capacity, and obviously that has a whole lot more variability.
I guess that's knowing your audience, I suppose. But what I'm thinking is, if you're, say at this point you have a song. Or you have a body of work even, and you're working up to release that, what are some things to maybe make that, I don't know, like extra special, or just make sure that that's like a success, I guess, is the question, right? Because like everybody, I mean, success is different for everybody, but everybody wants to have a good time or an effective gig.
Well, I think that's very much it. It's the success. What you need to know what you want to get out of it.
For sure.
You know, first you have to know why you're doing it. And then you have to know what you want to get out of it at the end. And if you're just playing some gigs, you just want to grow your audience. You just want to meet some fans, grow some fans, actually get some fans.
That's pretty easy. Right?
That's easy. You just go, you do show, you pull some people together to play with you. Like, we can talk about that as well. But like, that's sort of step one of just like, I want to make sure I'm in front of people that will like my music. And then that's the goal. Even if 2 people came away from that show and they were like, I really like that band, I'm going to go and see them again. That's generally a success if that's the point you're at. If you've got an EP, you got a release, you're in that next sort of step. It comes back to that plan. It comes back to having the budget and the design of what that's going to look like. You know, you need to know that to have a gig, if you're releasing an EP, you need to know when that EP is coming out, which means you need to know when the single's coming out, which means you need to know whether you're wanting to play before, on the night of, after, like all of that sort of stuff. So, and then it also, you've hopefully have established yourself somewhat if you're at that point. So you know what your audience is. You know you've sold out the wine cellar. You know you've not managed to sell out the wine cellar yet. So you know where your cap is and what sort of venue you're playing at. You know, if you've only had an audiences of 40 or 50 people, just sell out the wine cellar with 80. Just do that. If, you know, you've sold out the wine cellar before, you've played our show at Whammy or, you know, something like that, just stick with that. You know, you don't need to like reinvent the wheel straight away. It's better to anchor where you are, sell out that venue, then move on to the next one. And that's part of it. You know, if you want to make sure that gig works, it's part of your whole EP plan. You've got a marketing plan. You've got all these other things going on alongside it, you know.
Starting, if you're like a band that's new and you don't have a following yet, to start smaller is probably, start somewhere that has capacity of like 50 to 100 people and then sell, even if it's half, it still feels full. And like I like what you say about like making sure that that's secure before moving on. You kind of want to make sure that that audience is not just a one-off, that you've actually consistently got that many people coming to your shows before trying to book out a larger venue, because then, you know, that might then lead on to the other aspect of success, which could be, or maybe not success per se, but like it's always nice to put on a gig and break even, or to not make a loss on a gig. Yeah. And a good way to do that is to be booking venues that are your audience is going to fit into and that aren't like significantly larger than what you're able to fill.
Totally. I mean, I think everyone's experienced the first gig of your band selling better than the next 20 because all of your mates come to your first gig. Yeah. So you got to take that in consideration. Play that first gig, then ground yourself. Get a bunch of bands around you that are the right attitude, the right genre, the right size themselves, and like pull that together. And that's your first pile of gigs. You know, there's no reason to try and like be headline, and not work with other people. You know,
that's actually a good point, because playing support slots for other bands is great, right? To grow your audience. And that's kind of a standard approach that everyone knows is generally a good thing, or a good way to grow your audience. But how do you even get those opening slots for, say, someone who isn't local or who isn't your mate, right? Because often you'll just put a gig on together and someone headlines it, or whoever has the biggest following, the highest energy act or something.
Yeah, I think there's two different sort of, I would class support acts in kind of two different categories there. You're talking about like supporting a bill of like a small show of acts where you know the other act and you're just the support on that night. You know, maybe it's someone's first EP release and you're going along to support and help with their release. That's sort of a different category. Then we're talking about support slots in terms of when you've hit that point where you're looking to outgrow the venue you're in by supporting in the next size venue. You know, so obviously Tuning Fork's where I'm at, and that's obviously a logical step for a lot of people that are headlining and selling whammy shows, selling a couple of 100 tickets at Whammy or Galatos or Anthology Lunch or wherever else in Auckland. You can then look to support an international Tuning Fork, which is 400 tickets. I think that there's not really a formula to getting a support slot. No, there's not really a tick these boxes and then you'll be able to do it, because it's not up to you. All the time. Yeah. I think you've got to have some music to show. You've got to have something released so that the international, if you're talking international, you're talking big New Zealand acts, the agents, the management, whoever can go and actually have a listen. Yeah. So they can be like, yep, I see that this works. You've got to have a bit of a track record of what you've done. It helps if the people who make the decisions on those supports locally have seen you, know what you're about, have sort of watched what you're doing.
Even some good live videos, maybe.
Some good live videos make a difference as well. Yeah, and then essentially, like, it's just a pitch list, you know, like someone, whoever it is in the venue world or the promoter world in New Zealand, puts the list out to go to management for the band, and the band has a listen and they pick someone. Like, that's essentially all it is. There's no real sort of like hidden agenda for how to get a support slot. It's just like, you got to be on that list so that the band have a look at you.
And I guess to be the most applicable for that list is to make it the easiest for whoever you're sending that to, right? It's kind of what we were talking about.
Getting your own like ducks in a row. So that
totally.
You even have, like you say, like if you don't have your ducks in a row, if you don't have those things, then that person isn't going to even know you exist. You kind of have to put yourself, flick through a nice email with all those things and hope for the best. And
honestly, it's really basic what you have to send through when you're at that point as well. It's like just a couple of links and hey, I'm interested. Like, hoping that, you know, it can go in front of the artist kind of thing. I think it's important to also be selective about what you're looking for, who you're looking for, what the bands are, what the venues are, know where your sort of like level is for supports, you know what I mean? And sure, you know, like there's no harm in taking a punt at some of the bigger stuff, and sometimes like the artist will just really like you, and that like that can work, you know what I mean? And you can get a bit lucky there. Yeah. But know where you're at is also important. It's the same, it's just that putting on that show. Yeah. When you're going to book that venue, going to do that show, knowing where you're at what's the right space for you. Same when you're looking for those support slots.
If you have a good idea of what your sound is and what their sound is, and there seems to be like your sound complements theirs.
Totally.
It's probably going to work.
Totally.
More likely than if that's not a match. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, you know, like the desire for the type of support act an artist wants, or a management want, or the promoter wants, is going to be different from show to show. Maybe the show isn't selling that well, so they need a support that's got a bit more a bit more of an audience and a bit more, you know, to bring in terms of you know, paying tickets. But maybe the show's sold out and they're just looking for the perfect fit, which means doesn't necessarily need to have those the ticket sales to bring it. So there's a whole sort of, that's why I'm saying there's no real sort of
there's no formula.
It's just sort of knowing where you're at, being in the right spot, making sure you sort of push yourself out there,
being present in the scene, and just, you know, having that content available for people to look at.
Totally. I mean, totally. I mean, some of the supports I've sent through for acts when we've been asked for suggestions, it's like just acts that I know are busy, active, releasing, doing shit at the time. I'm like, it's a pop act. Here's your pop suggestions. Like, I often don't have to do a lot of digging into the scene to find a list, because it's like I get asked for an indie band, I get asked for rock, I get asked for whatever, punk. I've got an idea of who are going to be top of my list for those shows, and they're generally takes a wee while for them to outgrow that as well. You know, like there's a list for that genre, and that list will go, and maybe someone spikes out of that because they're too big to do that sort of support slot, and that's good. And then a new band will drop in at the bottom of it. But you know, I mean, every genre is slightly different, so there's always going to be a new pool to pull from. But if you're present, you're around, you're gigging, you're going to be in people's heads.
Would you say that it's beneficial for an artist, say you're building some momentum, you're putting on like a smaller show, and you're keen to do some support slots, to potentially reach out to bookers and just say, hey, if you want to come along, chuck you on the door.
I
don't want to check out what I'm doing.
Yeah, I don't think there's any harm in doing that. And I think,
why not?
I think that it sort of ties in with something that maybe we'll talk about around actually booking venues, but it's about knowing who you're talking to. Knowing who to go to. Like doing that work, doing that research to be aware of who the right people are. And sure, if you're like, I know who books supports for Live Nation, I know who books supports for Frontier, I know who books supports for the Tuning Fork or whatever, you know who to go to them. Absolutely, and invite them out. Like, you know, they're going to have a lot of emails in their inbox. They might not get back to you, but there's no harm in that. And equally, they're going to come back and be like, oh, cool, that person was like, wanted me to come along. That's cool. That's good.
If you, like, you've got all these things in your mind and you're ready to book a show mentally, how do you, like, make that happen? Like, what's the first step? How do you reach out to venues? Obviously, there's a difference between different venues depending on the size and whether you're actually just filling out a form online or emailing somebody.
You've thought about, okay, I've sold out the wine cellar. Maybe now I'll reach out to Anthology or even, say, Tuning Fork if you wanted to do a big leap. Yes.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think you need to know. It goes back to that plan, right? You need to know what you're doing, what the next step is, why you're going to that next venue, and what, you know. And I would argue that people should know a couple of gigs out what their plan are. You know, we did the wine cellar, we're going to do that again, and we're going to do Whammy, then we're going to do Tuning Fork, whatever. That, like, you know, have that little marker. You know, we are talking very Auckland centric at the moment. But, and then it's very much knowing who you're emailing and what they do, what that venue does.
Yes.
You know,
nice.
Some venues are all genres, some are a bit more specific, some are better for solo stuff, some are better for bands, some are late at nights, some have curfews. They're all slightly different. And so there's no point in just emailing a whole pile of venues without knowing exactly which one suits you the best.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's nothing worse than getting an email that's very clearly just gone to 15 venues and you know that you're on BCC and they've not really done any work into looking at why they want to come to your venue. most venues, I'm sure, would agree. We all get a lot of inquiries from acts that are not ready for us or don't seem to have a plan together for what's going to work, or I think you should target the person that you know is booking that venue.
Yeah,
it's not that hard to find out who the booker is for a venue.
Homework. Yeah,
just it's a little bit of homework. Dig around online. If you can't find it, surely a mate of yours has played the venue.
Yeah, you're in the scene.
Like, go and ask them, hey, who was the guy you were emailing, or the girl you were emailing, or the rep that was working the show, or the bar manager who you had the most contact with, if you didn't know who the booker was, and can you get me in touch with them so that I can have a line in, make sure, or, and then, then you email and you say, hey, Finn, I'm in this band, you've had my mates play this band, like, we play similar music, we have played with them before here, like, tell me that you've sold out this venue, tell me that you've done this. Like, all of that means that all of that means that I'm going to look at that email and go, hey, cool, they know who I am, they know a bit about the venue, they've seen we've had X, Y, Z bands, and they know that they fit that same vibe.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. That's immediately going to get a reply. Then we're going to have a conversation and see if it's going to work.
Yeah. Nice.
Whereas just a blank email, like a default email that goes into that info at inbox, like, I'm going to get to it. Do my best to get to all of them, and I'm sure everyone would agree we do our best, but
drops down the priority list.
Drops way down the priority list, and is probably going to require you to follow up and do and push again, and then then that timeline that you're working to is suddenly stretching and not working as well. So do that. Make sure you've worked out why that venue works for you, and then go in with a plan for the booker so that they know what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be coming in with.
Yeah.
Like, make it clear, hey, I think we can do 200 tickets, 250 tickets. We're going to have this great support act on the bill with us. Like, we've got a marketing plan because we're releasing our EP, or like, it's school holidays. We want to do a show for under 18s because it's school holidays, and we're going to do a big plan around that in our school and their school. Or it's Matariki, we want to do a celebration around Matariki that's coming up, or whatever, work out what you're doing. If it's not tied to something, just make a case for why it's going to work, Now, I am talking very specifically to bands that are, don't have an agent, don't have a manager, don't have these teams around them, because
I think that's kind of who I'm speaking to, because if you have those teams, then those people will already have that bucket of knowledge.
And they do it for you or tell you.
And that's and the reason those people have a better in is because of the relationships and the networks that they have. Like, when I get an email from an agent I know, it's like, cool. They're not going to email me if it's not going to work.
Yeah, totally.
The show might not work. That happens. Everyone can have the right plan in place and the show doesn't sell tickets. That happens. But if the idea is right, I'm not going to hear from them if it's not, if I know the agent. So immediately that email is a reply because I know them. And that's because they've got a team. So that's when, if you're not with a team, you're new, you're fresh, you're just getting started, or you're on that next step, you don't have that team around you. So you got to do the work to show the person that you're on the right track and you're making the right moves, and that they should work with you.
Yeah, that you're going to show up and sort of do what you say you're going to do.
Totally.
Or at least intend to, and do your best at doing what you're going to say say you're going to do.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So just thinking about now that you have contact with the venue that you want to be talking to, and they're on board, they're like, yep, sounds like a good plan. You're going to sell... it's fine, whatever. You're going to sell some tickets. It doesn't...
we're going to book the show. We're going to look at booking the show. Yeah, cool.
Let's get into this. What do you, as an artist or as a team or whatever, a band, need to have ready, or, with a pretty fairly quick turnaround? It's just always nice sending a quick reply with stuff in hand, sort of thing.
Yeah, totally.
What do you need to have ready for an artist, or for their team, for a venue, or for the venue's team, to just make it super easy on everybody's end?
So, I mean, generally a venue's going to have to contract the show to you. They're going to have to give you a contract. They're going to need who they're going to contract that to. If you're just the independent, or you've got a company name for your band or whatever, that's useful information to provide very early on.
Yeah.
Depends on the size of the venue, how detailed that's going to get. If you've locked in the show, you've been given the date, you're ready to go, then You're going to need your poster. You're going to need your images to a certain size that fits the website or the ticketing platform that the venue uses. If the venue doesn't have a ticketing deal, then you're going to need to go to Under the Radar or Eventfinder or whoever your preferred ticketing source platform is and go and build those tickets, send the links through to the venues, make it really easy. So every venue is slightly different in how much they will promote your show, how much work they will do for you, what they need. But I think the first thing is just to very bluntly ask them what they want and need, and then turn it around and give them exactly what they need.
Yeah.
But equally, bit of marketing stuff, posters, some images, a bio, like
it's great to have that on hand.
All of that sort of basic stuff that you should have ready to go anyway because you're planning a tour or you're planning some shows.
Yeah.
And then have a plan for when you're going to announce. Make a plan for when you're going to announce, not just it'll be on Tuesday. Set a time, set a plan around that time so the venue can share your posts so that you've got some ads going, whatever you're going to do.
Yeah.
Don't just sort of arbitrarily decide, it's already, okay, just push it out, go. Yeah. Make a plan for that as well, and then, get that show out and then just work your ass off marketing it, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
What about things like Tech Rider on the tech side of things, and maybe you could touch briefly on, like, if you are at a venue that provides a rider,
totally.
what sort of that entails.
Tech Rider is definitely useful. I think at that initial booking stage, probably not crucial.
Yeah.
And often, bigger venues might have another person that handles that sort of stuff, not necessarily the booker. Certainly for, tuning fork and stuff like that, we have 2 or 3 of us that look after various parts of that stage. Have that on hand, have that ready. You should have that anyway. You're going to need to pass that on at some point. Definitely do pass it on. Don't wait till the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Make sure you get it out a couple of weeks, 3 weeks out to whoever the contact is.
Yeah.
They might not be that bothered, but you want to make sure that if they need it, and especially if you're weird or complicated,
it's different.
If you're not just a 4 or 5 piece band, if you've got some interesting instruments or you're doing a bunch of things with vocals or just something that's going to be a bit complicated for the tech when they arrive, like, provide that info as early as you can. That's only going to endear you to those people that you're going to be working with on the day. In terms of like an actual rider, so as you scale up the venues, you start off by getting a couple of drinks, basically, probably. The venue will just say,
maybe a 50% discount.
2,
yeah.
Couple of beers or a staff discount kind of vibe. And then perhaps you might get a meal. And then as you get up into bigger venues, Tuning Fork, San Fran, Meow, some of these other 300-400 capacity venues and things, it's often that you need to flick through a like hospitality rider or a green room rider that has, what you'd like in the room. You have to pay for that. And it will generally be, some drinks from the bar that they'll provide and put into your green room. And perhaps if you want to, you can ask for some snacks or some food and things like that. Good to have an idea of what that is, know how much it should cost you if you're asking for it from the band, from the venue, I mean.
So you can budget for it.
Yeah, and equally ask, hey, can we bring stuff in or are we not allowed to? So that if you want to reduce those costs, you can do it yourself,
Yeah.
Some venues will allow you, some venues won't, depends on their license and various things like that. So, but having that idea in your head, and if you're a support on some of those shows, always good to just have a little sort of trimmed down version that's like, hey, we like lager or we like white wine or like just something really simple where you're like, hey, we'd love just a few drinks and this is kind of what we like. And then if there's some chips or snacks or like something great, we'd like
I
that.
guess a common theme that's kind of coming through what you're saying is just be good at communicating. Just ask. Like they're human on the other side of that phone call or text or email. And I guess just ask.
I mean, think about what you'd like to be, how you'd like to be communicated with, how you'd like to read an email. Like, don't have it all in italics. Don't have it all in bold. Have it in
italics and bold.
Have it in a straightforward, simple format. Like, use paragraphs. Like, use full stops. It's all like all of that sort of stuff. It's like, it sounds really basic, but honestly, not always the case. And all of that, it's like makes it easier for me to read. Makes it easier for me to quickly get my head into it.
Yeah.
And all of that is like, if you'd like to receive an email that looks like that, or you'd like to receive that simple rider or the simple tech rider or all the info you asked for at the time you asked for it, then do the same for the venues.
You can always like, I know, like I feel like I always overshoot in terms of professionalism in the initial email.
Oh yeah, and then
you can start off with like a
totally.
Kia ora, I'm blah, 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 blah. Here is everything you need, dude. And if that person, often, people just reply to you like, yeah, chirp.
Yeah, all good.
And then you can be like, okay, cool, now we've got a bit. You still want to have all
broken
your
the ice
stuff organised, but then you can sort of drop the formalities.
The number of like 2-sentence replies I've sent to people who've sent me a long email does not mean that I didn't like
read the
email and value and care about that email. It's just that, cool, great. That was it. That was all I needed to say.
Like, it's fantastic. Like, thank you so much.
Thanks for sending that to me. All looks good. Talk to you soon. That literally was all I needed to say because they gave me everything I needed. Whereas a short email from them that's not got everything I need, I have to actually take the time to then reply, listing what I want and why I need it and all that. And that takes way more time from me.
Definitely.
Which means it's probably going to sit flagged in my inbox for 2 or 3 extra days. Just because it's going to take me time to go, oh, I've got to go and reply to that.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. That makes sense. Yeah.
It's all like, it sounds so basic, but really like every time I talk to people, I'm like, have your plan, do your research, make sure you have what you need to provide to people and provide it sensibly and clearly, and just goes so far. Like it just goes so far. Your next step's going to be better. Your return to that venue is going to be better because I'm going to go,
it's that band that reached out, like,
these guys, I love them.
Show. Yeah.
They're so easy to work with. They provide everything I wanted. They weren't difficult on the day. They were real chill. Like, great. You know, like I'm going to put you top of my support list when I'm sending off a sport because I'm going to be like, they're a good band, but also they're just like, they do the work and they do what they're doing. I know they're going to post and share and market it for you. You know, all of that. It's just like, you know, you endear yourself and then you've developed that relationship. And then 6 months down the track, your mate who wants to play the tuning fork asks you for the contact to get in touch with the tuning fork. And you're like, yeah, I get along very well with Finn. Here you go. I'll put you in touch.
Yeah.
You know, so then you're that step for the next band.
Yeah. You're that sort of leg up or arm to reach out to. Yeah.
Totally. And I think the other big part of all of this is like the other bands that are playing, your peers, they're your like sounding boards. They're your research. You know, they're your guinea pigs. Like, you know, your mate who released their album 3 months ago, it's all like what they did. Or like what worked or what succeeded. Like all of their posts, all of the like media that came in for it, like where it got played, they're going to have posted, hey, I got top 10 on this. They're going to post that because they're going to want to. So then you're going to be able to go, oh, they sent it to BFM. They sent it to whoever. Cool. That's something else I should do on my list.
Yeah.
You know, like go and look at all that stuff. You know, they played that venue. Oh, that makes sense. I'm the same level now as they were then. There we go. Found a venue to play. You know, like it's all there. It's all in the public eye because that's what bands are doing. They're making as much noise as they can.
Yeah.
So
online is
everything's there for you to go and then look at. You know?
Yeah.
Genre aside and like personal taste.
Totally.
Are there certain things that, because you've seen a lot of gigs, like you've probably seen so many gigs, probably so many that even that you know, whether they're like totally up your alley or really not your vibe.
Yeah.
Are there certain things that stand out to you as being like consistently enjoyable to watch as someone that's in, or someone like in front, like from an audience perspective or even behind the scenes, you know, like obviously we've already talked about like someone that's organized and someone that's good at communication.
You're talking like musicality, performance-wise now.
Yeah. Like if you're watching a band on stage, you know, you can even see a band that you really don't like the music they're playing, but they're still putting on a good show. Or say they've actually managed to sell out the venue. They've been smart about the support acts that they've been booking. Like what, you know, if you've got a few things that stand out to you as being consistently good ways of going about things or things that make a show just impactful.
I think from a behind the scenes perspective, as the venue, as the techs, as the, you know, those people that are putting on the show for you as the band, like you're putting on the show, but they're making it happen.
Yeah.
It's all of those things we've talked about, organized, all that sort of stuff, but it's like, it's just the right energy in the room. Like a bit of appreciation for the people that are working in the room for you. You know, like just being on stage, thanking your front of house audio tech, thanking your lighting tech, even if they're your team. Like even if you're an international, like touring your own audio tech, and you know who so and so tours with you for 6 months of the year, just thanking them, like they made you sound good tonight.
Yeah,
like all of that makes us in the venue go, cool. They're nice. They are doing this is their job, and they're doing it well, and they know they're doing it well, and they're doing the right things to make sure that people are gonna want to work with them again. As an audience, genre, like I do see a lot of gigs, and I see a lot of gigs I don't like. I book a lot of gigs that aren't necessarily my taste, but that's not the point, right? You know, you're booking as a venue. We're booking what works for audiences, what works for the room.
Yeah.
Our taste is kind of not relevant, really. Yeah. But as an audience member, if it's energy. If the band are having a good time on stage, they're gelling together, they're chatting to the audience, they're getting into it, or if they don't chat to the audience because that's not what their genre does, they're doing what their genre does, and they can tell they're having a good time.
Yeah,
they can do it.
It's a great show.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like there's 100 people in the room, 300 people in the room, 10,000 people in the room. You can tell if someone on stage is having a good time.
Yeah.
Or they're faking it, but they look like they're having a good time.
Faking it real good.
Still mad, still good, still gonna have a good time.
A good show.
You know, like I've heard stories of people that come out on stage at Spark Arena and the vibe's not on, and it's just not a good show.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah,
it's just like it could be your favorite band in the world, but if you got 10,000 people in the room that pick up the vibe from the person on stage, but they're not really in it, it's probably not going to work.
Almost like, you know, before you play the gig, like before the day, you obviously spend time rehearsing so that your show's tight. But it's almost like on the day, it's like more about you got to take care of your energy and your like, you know, all of those things being organized. Communication actually means that you're less stressed on the day. You've done the hard yards. You've showed up to the venue early. You've done your sound check on time. Everyone's happy. No one's running around, and that means
the venue have your tech writer, so they knew what to expect. So you weren't frazzled when they didn't have the right number of DIs or whatever. Like all of that means that you're then in performance mode.
Exactly. And
can be that performer.
Yeah. Your sound check runs on time, so you have time to go and get some food.
Exactly.
You know, all of those things add up to.
It's the admin, right?
Yeah.
So all your prep is done. You can take off your promoter hat if you're an independent artist. You can take off your booking hat. You can take all those things
and just
off
be the guitarist or whatever.
Just play the show.
Yeah,
exactly.
and that's really important.
Time.
Yeah, because that energy on stage is almost sacred. Like you really need to like nurture the energy of the band.
Totally.
And if people are stressed, then the like likelihood of you actually performing badly is much higher because you're going to be really anxious and nervous on stage.
Yeah, and like if you're in it and you're going for it and you're new and you make a mistake, someone plays the wrong chord, I don't know, string breaks, drummer drops their drumstick, like all this sort of shit doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like if people are in the zone, people are having a good time, like just keep going. It's fine. Everyone does it. No one cares. Like no one's going to notice. Half the time, more than half the time, 95% of the audience don't even notice that like mistake that you come off stage worrying about.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I've stood at the like stage door of the tuning fork and had like sold out artists come off stage and be like, oh my God, it was awful. Oh, we did this, blah, blah. And I'm like, saw the whole show. It was amazing. It was
amazing.
Like, everyone does that, whatever level you're at.
Yeah,
you know?
that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're having a good enough time, like you said, the audience is having a good enough time, which means everyone's more forgiving. If you're like all tense and you make a mistake and you show it's really obvious that you feel uncomfortable, then humans are humans, man. That placebo effect is nuts. If you're an audience member and you're watching someone, you're like, oh, now I feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think the other thing is if you're an artist that's, you know, if you've got merch at that point and you're comfortable with talking to your audience and that's something that works with the genre you're doing, some artists don't like to do that. It's not how they do it. But if you're comfortable with that, making that time after the show, be at the merch table, sell your merch,
be there
with whoever's there helping you, sign some stuff if you're at that point that people want you to sign things, like be there, make the effort to thank those people who've come out and spent $10, $20, $30, whatever they've spent to see your show. It's like that's hard-earned money for them.
Yeah.
And they're paying for you to do your career and your job. Make the effort to just have a minute's conversation with them if you can, if that's something you feel comfortable with. There's no like
It goes a long way.
Yeah, it goes such a long way. Billie Eilish played the tuning fork twice, and like we've had a few artists since that have done it. It's always really noticeable when they do it. She stood outside and met every audience member that wanted to be met after her show. Yeah. And from all accounts, that's something she did for such a long time in the early stages of her career. Yeah. And we've had a couple of other artists that have come through that have also done that. And you can just tell where they're going. You can just see that movement up, because those audiences who've literally said hello, handed them a present, given them a hug, whatever, they're like, I'm here now. That's me. Like, I'm a fan. That I'm coming back next time.
I am die hard.
Yeah. Like, I'll be there. And that's if that's 300 people at a tuning fork show. Like,
man, if that's not building an audience.
That's 300 people. Next time they're going to bring a friend each. You got 600 next time. Just like that, So and it happens all the way back down, all as small, like, just that fan that buys a CD, just have a chat, have a yarn, all there, done,
I was going to say, even as a support act, like, if you're just hanging around at the back, even, that's not going to be 300 people. It might be 5.
Yeah, totally.
But those 5 people that didn't know they were going to see you that night and then come up, take the bravery to come up and say, oh, you guys really like your set. And you'd be like, oh, thanks for coming early, man. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Rather than that person going home and forgetting about you, they're then going to remember that they had a personal connection with you, and it increases the likelihood of them coming back for sure. Yeah,
it's all like, I hammer it home about these boring things about being organized and having a plan and being personable and all of that, but that's really all it comes down to. Like, you've got to do the work so that, because I'm conscious that a lot of this is talking about artists that aren't at the point where they have a team. You are the team. You're wearing all the hats.
Yeah.
So if you do all the work, that means then on artist day, as we were just saying, you're just there as the artist.
Yeah.
Don't forget that after you've been the artist, maybe put that hat on that's like, hey, what's my next step going to look like?
Yeah.
I should talk to some people. I should be friendly.
All
that. It's like so basic, but I don't say it because it happens every time. Is that the right way of putting that? It doesn't always happen, so I really feel like it needs to be said.
Yeah, definitely. It's really easy. And sometimes actually that's really hard to do when you've finished playing a show and you're absolutely exhausted and all you want to do is go home and go to sleep because you've got work the next day. But just being like, okay, I'm just going to take 10 minutes.
Yep.
I still got to go home early, so I'm going to like keep it brief. Totally. I'm going to go out.
At least you showed face at the end
of it.
And equally, like, if you don't have the energy and you're in a band, send one of the band out.
Yeah.
It's fine. You know what I mean? Like, you don't all have to do it every night. You don't all have to be there on form every time. Like, don't punish yourself for not being up for it.
Yeah.
Like, but make the effort on stage and then send whoever.
A minion out.
Yeah. Like, if there's 4 of you, and you're the singer and you're just not there today, send your drummer and your guitarist out. Make a point of them going out and making, chatting, like, because at least then you're like, well, they got a chance to talk to someone,
Well, thanks so much for coming in and chatting, man. Like, it's awesome to be picking everyone's brain in the in this podcast. And when it comes to booking shows and talking about tours and planning, like, that's what you do, so it's really awesome to pick your brain.
No, I'm always happy to chat.
Hopefully this helps someone who's sitting at home going,
how to
gosh, now I know.
I hope so.
Now I can go book a show.
I hope so. And my door is always open for people that need to have that chat, so
amazing.
Appreciate that. Thanks so much.
No worries.